All three were wearing what appeared to be explosive vests.
London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady. London Bridge is falling down. London Bridge is falling down, falling down.
But the police have established that this clothing was fake and worn only to spread panic and fear.
Fair lady.
Peace and blessings to each and every single body. I hope this broadcast, narrowcast, podcast finds you all in the best of health, wealth, and self-respect. Just want to reflect on the last general election, or the last specific election, or the fiasco known as the British political system. What a typically British farce we've had. What a typically British fiasco. The winner has been declared as a loser. The winner has been declared as a loser. The loser has been declared as a winner. And in typical British nomenclature and in typical British satire, we continue as if nothing's wrong and everything is as it appears to be, which is completely farcical. In order for the rich, bloodsuckers of the poor, to remain rich, all it needs is for the poor to do nothing. In order for the rich to maintain their positions of authority, to maintain their positions of superiority, all they need is for the poor to remain dumb, blind, deaf, and ignorant. All the rich really need for them to maintain their positions of power is for you and I and the poor people to do nothing, to see nothing, to say nothing, to think nothing, to do nothing. All the rich really need in order to maintain their positions of power are enough poor, ignorant people. And that's exactly what they have. The winner of this election, Theresa May, has been heralded to be a loser because she came with a campaign of strong and stable or strong and able or together forever or never or whatever. And she completely threw the British population off with her mandate of attacking the elderly, of attacking the public service workers, of attacking the students, of attacking the disenfranchised and the disabled, and killing people with inheritance taxes, making them pay for their social care bills, which they've worked all their lives for and contributed towards the national security, or their national insurance rather. To tell people after they work for 30, 40, 50 years that, hey, don't worry about social care now, because when you're dead, we're going to sell your house and leave the proceeds. Don't worry about social care. Don't worry about the cost of social care. We're here to help you. Don't worry about the cost of social care. We're here to help you. And once you're dead, we will take your house and sell it, and we will give your children £100,000. Now, perhaps your house is worth £250,000. The government's going to take the £150,000 to pay for your social costs. What if your social costs only cost £60,000 or £20,000? Well, the government's going to sell your property and make it a ward of the state and sell it to the highest bidder and keep all the profits and give your children a remittance of £100,000. So what she is in effect saying is that she's going to look out for all of her bankster friends, all of her investment sharks, all of those people that helped to select her into the premiership in the first place, and screw everybody else. All those people that are working hard, all the industrious workers of the country, all those people that have got up the system through meritocracy and not through nods and winks and secret handshakes and shady deals done in dark places and smoke-filled rooms and pedophile-filled rooms. All those people that work hard and save hard and praise God, they will be shafted by the system. So she is really a loser in that respect, because her plan of, hey, goddamn, who gave her the idea? Was it that guy? Was it that geezer from the Sunday program that gave her the idea that, hey, you're 30, 40 points in the lead anyway, it doesn't really matter what you say, so just why not have a general election? Was it Andrew Lamar on the Sunday Politics?
Are you tempted in any way to call a snap election?
I think what's important, particularly having had the referendum vote, is that we have a period of stability. There's a challenge ahead in ensuring that we make a success of coming out of the European Union. I think it's important that we focus on that and the other reform agenda that I have for the country as we go forward. And we'll be continuing the manifesto on which the Conservative government was elected in 2015. So I don't think there's a need for an election. I think the next election would be in 2020.
Let me make this very clear, because again, it's very important. Under current law, the next election will be in 2020. No ifs, no buts, no snap elections, no changing the law. Under you, is that absolutely certain, that we're not going to see an election before 2020?
I'm not going to be calling a snap election. I've been very clear that I think we need that period of time, that stability, to be able to deal with the issues that the country is facing and have that election in 2020.
They said to her, look, why don't you throw an election? You're 30, 40 points in the lead, you can't lose. And she said, yes, we're strong and stable. Yes, we're ready and able. Yes, we're sure and steadfast. Yeah, we're going forward together forever. We can't lose. And so her so-called think tank came up with these stupid slogans and attacked the poor.
I'm elected as Prime Minister. If a Conservative government is elected, what we will be doing is working to create a strong economy in this country.
And lots of young people do a job that I wouldn't do and perhaps you wouldn't do. They decide to become nurses and give something back. Now, according to the Royal College of Nursing, they have had a 14% pay cut since 2010. And we now get stories again from the RCN of lots of ordinary nurses by the end of the week having to use food banks because they can't afford to pay for food. That is not the kind of country that you want to run, is it?
I want a country that works for everyone, not just the privileged few, not just the privileged few, not just the privileged few. If we look at what happens, well, if we look at what is happening in relation to pay within the National Health Service, in fact, when you look at basic pay together with progression pay, actually for around half of NHS staff, they have annual increase of around, on average, 3% rather than just the 1% basic pay. But I come back to the key question, which is we have, and if you look at the National Health Service and funding in the National Health Service, we're putting £10 billion extra into it.
I'm sorry, Prime Minister, but we have nurses going to food banks at the moment. That must be wrong. But we have nurses going to food banks at the moment. That must be wrong.
We have, and there are many complex reasons why people go to food banks. And I want to develop an economy where, yes, we have a strong economy so that we can pay for the public services that people need, but also we have an economy where we're creating secure jobs and well-paid jobs and higher-paid jobs for people. Well, but you're only going to do that if you've got
they haven't got enough money to eat at the moment.
But if you're only going to, as we go through this election, every party will be talking about what they think is important. I'll be talking about
strong and stable leadership.
Well, I'll be talking, and there's a reason for talking about strong and stable leadership and having a strong and stable government. It's precisely because this is the most important election the country's faced in my lifetime. It's about the future of the country. It's about the national interest.
It's just that people can listen to that kind of thing and think it's a bit robotic.
No, when I talk about leadership, when I talk about the strength of the government for the future, I do it for a reason, and the reason is this. We are facing a moment of change in this country. We're facing a moment when we have the opportunity to take this country forward, to make it an even better place to live for people, for their futures, and more secure.
Meanwhile, the ever-guile Jeremy Corbyn came like a corner shop owner who was giving out free sweets for everybody. Free sweets for the poor, free sweets for the students, free sweets for the elderly, free sweets for the NHS, and hell, even free sweets for the trade unions. This guy, like Theresa May, a staunch Remainers. They campaigned for Remain within Europe, so they're not fit for purpose. Now they have a hung government. We need to hang the government. We need to get these people, bring these people and string them up. Bring them and string them up. And once they're dead, we dig them up, we pull them back up again and hang them again because they didn't die hard enough the first time. These bloodsuckers of the poor, these are the real terrorists. They just look into their eyes. It's like, I don't know, Jeremy Corbyn and Theresa May, like the Punch and Judy show. You got the horrible hunchback on one side, and you got the pin face, pinstripe wearing. Yes, Jeremy Corbyn's had a history of anti-apartheid campaigning and saying good things to the Jamaicans and appealing to the Africans and the Nigerians, saying, yes, our country has raped your country. And yes, he's appealed to the so-called Muslims and saying, yes, we need to stop bombing Syria. We need to get rid of Trident and what have you.
I'm terrified.
Hey, there's no champagne, we don't break.
They tell you that I've mastered it. I'm just practicing, I always represent my class like fractured in, but I am not a privileged prick of a politician. I am the broken home with no pot to piss in. So if you stop to listen, you would know that I'm better than any other thing that has ever been made a matter.
My name is the novelist. I'm always talking about from the ends. My friends, we got each other and we don't pretend. But you're perpetrator, moving like we're blessed. But no, the fakery can put you in a mess.
Bag on the outfit, casual. Boxes and socks are fiber. Using the traps like Yugi. Hair one's white like Ruby. Mika S hit a lick. Threw a man down on the rulie. Gassed on the rhythm, I'm hyper. Riding the rhythm on point like sniper. Sharp bars that you can't dodge like Viper. Get it? Can't dodge like Viper.
But Corbyn is he's just the same. They're all just the same. And we, the people, we, the poor, we're just pawns in their game. We've been played, people. We've been had. We've been took. We've been hoodwinked. Look, a year ago, almost to the day, I said, yes, we will win the Brexit campaign. Yes, we will win the referendum. And Britain will vote. Britain will decide to leave Europe. For all the right and proper reasons, as far as I'm concerned. Not for the tricknology, not for the reasons they feed you in the media, for immigration, for jobs, blah, blah, blah. No, it's because we don't want to be run by a bunch of faceless, nameless bureaucrats hiding away. We don't want them hiding away in Belgium, telling us what we need to be doing, telling our fishermen off the coast of Sunderland or Tyne what their quota is and when and where they can fish, and letting all the rest of the Europeans encroach onto British waters. We don't want our laws being made by people dressed in dark suits and black boots. Does it sound familiar? The dark suits and the black boots doing the goose stomp in Brussels. We don't want that. That's why we voted for leave. Now, all those people that say, no, we want our Europe back, I think they have a grandiose, I think they have a fantastic or a romantic notion of what Europe really is. Europe has been a project which has been alive for the last 100 years. It's about empowering the rich. It's about allowing the black nobility. It's allowing the House of Gotha, Rothsburg, Habsburg, Chotsburg, whatever they call themselves, the House of Windsor. It's allowing these bloodsuckers and vampires of the poor to spread their wealth across Europe and across the world. It's about globalism. It's about internationalism. That's what it's really all about.
Monarchy is by definition incompatible with democracy. You cannot have a government chosen by election and at the same time have individuals occupying positions of power simply because they were born the sons or daughters of families who already have political power. It was on this principle that the English people fought a civil war, made a revolution and cut off their king's head in the 17th century.
Prince Charles has been, by his own admission, a kind of mascot for the British arms trade. So much so that even he has complained about being used to market weapons in his perhaps more sober moments. But this is still a man who, this is his job, and you can see here where it's a job that's been done as a role that the royal family always carry out, regardless of, you know, whether they have a sort of momentary crisis of conscience or whatever. But it remains the case that up until very recent years and months, the royal family, and Prince Charles in particular, have been responsible for closing a very big arms deal, particularly with Saudi Arabia. This is another monarchy which can probably does actually beat the royal family in terms of its just reactionary nature. This is a regime that regularly decapitates people for adultery and witchcraft and drug use and anything you can name, really. So this is a thoroughly reactionary and state, and one that has committed crimes against humanity that the British monarchy have rubber-stamped.
So those students who say, we want our Europe back. Yeah, we could have a Europe, but we all really want a Europe. But it needs to be a Europe for the workers. It needs to be a Europe for the people, not for the aristocrats, not for the corporate internationalists, not for the multinational corporations, not for these bureaucrats, not for the royal family, not for these rich and wealthy people in their lofty places to sing down and swing down lofty ideals to us, the real people that work hard and slump and graft every single day. It's not for them. In order for these rich, in order for these aristocrats, in order for these royal families to continue with their wickedness, all they need is for the poor to do nothing. In order for the rich and the wealthy to continue with their bloodlust, to continue with their war on a global level, all they need is for the people to do nothing. And don't forget, people, we are responsible for their actions. We will be held accountable in the final judgment, in the final assessment, in the final analysis. We will be held accountable for what our government does at home and abroad. So when we pay our taxes and the government attacks us, or when we pay our taxes and the government attacks Iraq and Afghanistan and now Syria, behind a smokescreen of so-called terrorism,
stabbing people.
Breaking news now at 11. Tragedy in London. 6 people dead, 48 wounded, and 3 suspects killed by police after 2 terror attacks just walking distance apart from each other.
It started when a speeding van slammed into a crowd on the London Bridge. Then
when we pay our taxes for that, then we will be held accountable. Just take a look at Corbyn and May. This horrible hunchback has been handed defeat on the plate of victory, and this Corbyn has been handed victory on the plate of defeat. Oh, what a typically British scenario we have invented for ourselves. Or is it that somebody else has invented this scenario for us? Is it just to spread confusion and frustration and uncertainty in and amongst the people and the populace? If you listen to David Icke, who's been right on point, who's been hitting the nail on the hammer, who's been hitting the hammer on the nail's head for the last 20, 30 years, he'll tell you, look, it doesn't matter who you vote for. All these politicians are pulled by the same, all these politicians are paid for by the same corporate masters, by the same lobbyists, by the same international globalists, by the same multinational companies, by the same bloodsuckers of the poor. So it doesn't matter who you vote for. It matters not who you vote for. Why didn't Theresa May attack the inherited wealth of the aristocrats? Why didn't she attack the inherited wealth of the Barclays Bank and the Lloyds Bank, who had direct investments into tobacco, into sugar, into cotton, and into slavery for hundreds of years? Why didn't she say, look, Britain has profited from the back of slavery, we're going to pay back to Africa and withdraw our troops and withdraw our mining extracting companies from Africa and level the playing field? No, because the rich will never level the playing field. We don't want a revolution, because all a revolution is a turn of the wheel. We don't want a turn of the wheel. We want to level the playing field. So it's not a revolution. We're not talking about turning things around. We're talking about turning things over. We need a restart. We need a reboot. We're reaching that critical mass, people, where I know you're thinking like what I'm saying, like what we need to be doing. I'm not going to come up with any witty slogan for you to catch hold on. That's not my business. What I'm going to say is for you to try and do some research yourself. Just look at the false flags. Look at Peter Powell and 7/7 in London and see for yourself that these people have been playing us. Peter Powell went on BBC television, went on BBC radio and said, you know what, at 7/7 in 2005, we were running simultaneous rehearsals. We had a crisis actor team. We had a crisis management team of over 1,000 personnel who were delegated at the exact same locations as where the real so-called terrorist bombs actually took place. Perhaps he was a patsy, perhaps it was unbeknown to him, but it's impossible for there to be 4 independent individual terrorist attacks in London at the exact same locations where you have your dress rehearsals, where you have your rehearsals for terrorist attacks to happen. So it's impossible. So perhaps, I suggest, perhaps there was a dual activity going on. Perhaps his friends at Scotland Yard or within MI5 and MI6 didn't really tell him the full scope of the activities of the day. Didn't really tell him that there would be real bombs or really people would be getting slain and people would be getting blown up and killed. Because for sure, some people were killed. But look into the crisis actors for yourself. Don't listen to me. Don't check out my hustle. Don't believe the hustle and the bustle. Know it for yourself. Find it out for yourself. That's what I would suggest. When I say attack the aristocrats, attack the aristocrat, the reason being they're tied into this globalist conspiracy. They're tied into this globalist plan. The Nazis from the First and Second World War, they are now running our government. They are now running our royal family, so-called royal family. Prince Philip, the so-called husband and consort of Queen Elizabeth II, he's a member of the House of Schleswig-Holstein-Sonderburg-Luxembourg. I kid you not. He was born the Greek and Danish prince. And the Greek and Danish prince were under the power of the Nazis. Prince Philip's brothers, all of his 4 sisters, married leading Nazis. His brother was a leading Nazi SS officer, just about Gestapo. All the Nazis are involved in the plan. I don't want to talk too much about this for now. Just know that these royal families, these bloodlines of the Merovingians, the bloodlines of the black nobility, they're running the country purely because we the people, do nothing to stop them. These princes of pedophiles, these princes of darkness, these queens of catastrophe and destruction are running rampant on our ignorance. They're running rampant on our apathy. They're running rampant on our compliance and complicity to their madness and duplicity. We need to stop them. We need to stop them. We need to stop it. It needs to happen. After the Second World War, quickly, Prince Philip married into, the Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, the Duke of Battenberg, the Prince of Greece and Denmark, married into the British royalty. 5 years later, he became the consort. The Nazis married into ours. And now all their sons and daughters are all Nazis. I'm not going to say, well, once a Nazi, always a Nazi, because just because your grandfather was a Nazi doesn't mean you are. But if your grandfather profited off the basis of murdering Jews and murdering innocents around the world, then you need to make amends for that and make some form of recompense and apologize on behalf of your parents and your forebearers. That's the reality. Because there will be otherwise a karmic debt to be paid. And any time within the universe, if there is a karmic imbalance, then the cosmos or the universe or the Gaia or the planet or the God or the creator or we as a human population will make sure that the cosmic imbalance is brought back into balance. And there is a cosmic injustice. There is a cosmic imbalance right now, where we, the people, remain poor, we, the people, remain ignorant, blind, deaf, and dumb, and we do nothing. Thereby the rich continue to lead us down the path of self-destruction. They feed us lies with the media, television programs, social media, social programs. Why do you think it's called a program? Because they program you to become dumb, deaf and blind. And you soak them up. And yes, they do use propaganda. All television is propaganda. All the news is propaganda. False news, fake news. I say just look into the things for yourself, family. And just like with a fractal, every little piece is a microcosm of the larger picture. So what I'm going to say now, it won't come to many as a surprise, but it's reality. And that is, they will not allow us to leave. So whatever happens is going to be reflective of that. They will not allow us to leave Europe. There are going to be ties that bind. And from the time you have a bind, that means you're not separate. That means you've not left. From the time we can't leave Europe, then Brexit is a myth. Brexit is not a reality. Their global project is the reality. Their global plan of one world army, one world government, and one world currency, and yes, one world religion is coming to fruition. They already have cryptocurrencies in place and ready and able. They're already giving everybody in the world a digital signature. You're already implanted with RFID chips. They have nanobots. They have nano dust, which are microchips the size of dust, for heaven's sake. And we breathe them in. There are chemtrails in the air. There's fluoride in the water, amongst other points, amongst other poisons and particulates. There's genetically modified food bombarding our shelves. We have the rise of cancer, the rise of ill health, dementia, the rise of insomnia, the rise of madness, the rise of cancer, the rise of ill health, the rise of dis-ease. People, all it takes for the rich to remain in their positions of power is for the poor to do nothing.
Since the Second World War, it has been that the arms industry has played a very important role in the British economy and in British trade. The British are very keen to sell top-of-the-range weapons technology. Very often, the market is dictators, particularly dictators in the Middle East and North Africa. And if you want to establish diplomatic relations and trading relations with feudal or semi-feudal regimes in the Middle East and North Africa, it helps if you've got your own royals who can operate at that social level, who can give you an entree. So Prince Charles has played a major role, Prince Andrew has played a major role, other royals I'm sure as well have played a role in developing these diplomatic relations and helping arms manufacturers to sell weapons to Middle Eastern dictators.
Unlike the case of Prince Andrew, when there have been other members of royal families in other parts of the world who have got involved, for instance, in the arms trade and behaved inappropriately, they suffer consequences. For instance, Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands at one point was promoting arms sales into the Netherlands and was working with 2 American companies to do so. Neither of the companies realized he was working for the other, and his wife, the Queen of the Netherlands, didn't know he was working for either of them. When it was discovered that he was engaged in this activity, he was stripped of all sorts of rights and privileges, and he was never allowed to wear the uniform of the Dutch military ever again. Now, having a royal family is not ideal, but if one has one for whatever historical reasons, at least make them accountable and answerable for their actions, whereas in this country they can effectively do as they like.
But Andrew's particular form of charm worked as well on dictators whether or not they were of the royal variety. He is reported to have had a close friendship with Saif Gaddafi, son of Colonel Gaddafi, and hosted a lunch at Buckingham Palace for the son-in-law of Tunisian dictator Ben Ali, despite being warned of his corrupt activities by the British Embassy in Tunis. As for the Saudi government, the biggest market for UK arms companies, they are now using those arms in an unprovoked attack on neighbouring Yemen. In the world of international diplomacy, it is usual to distinguish between a nation's hard power and its soft power. The hard power of the US, for instance, is its military capacity and its economic strength. Its soft power might be the cultural influence of Hollywood, the social influence of its press, or the good feeling felt by millions of children around the globe towards Ronald McDonald or Captain America.
The soft power of the UK is considered to be a persuasive approach using cultural and economic means, whereas the UK hard power would be considered to be military might, aggression, war or policing.
So it is with the British monarchy. Part of its power, as we have seen, is its hard power, the power of wealth, of landed property, of direct political influence. But perhaps it has even greater influence in its exercise of soft power, the ideological and cultural influence that the royal family exerts in British society.
Well, I think in terms of the soft and hard power, so to speak, of the royal family, there are there's a clear backstop to everything that happens in British democratic life. They do sanction any political party that comes into power. In fact, in the 1970s, they overturned the election of a progressive prime minister in Australia because it went so far against the interests of the royal family. So they actually do have the power to overturn governments. These things are very rarely used partly because to do that does actually draw into public awareness the actual power the monarchy has. Like the Black Spider memos, we're told that actually no, they're just a kind of, they're just the icing on the cake. They're just a kind of tourist attraction. They're just, symbolic figureheads and so on. But actually, with the Black Spider memos, you find out no, they're actually interfering in daily life on a regular basis. Around the Scottish independence campaign, you see that they're actually interfering in the democratic processes going on inside Britain. So there's always the kind of a dance between their soft and their hard power. So when they use it, when they bring out the big guns, they actually expose themselves. So they're very careful. The British ruling class is very careful about where they step in and where they don't step in.
It's very difficult to actually tell what power and influence the monarchy has over this government because it's so secret. It's like the rest of the corporate lobbying industry in this country is all done behind closed doors, or as David Cameron likes to say, it's a quiet word. We don't know who's speaking to whom, we don't know who's having a quiet word with whom about which policies. So I see it as actually the tip of a very large iceberg. We have a £2 billion industry that we know nothing about, and the royalty are part of that. I mean, they're exceptional because they have this kind of magic sheen around them, which is the pomp and the costumes and the dressing up that they do. And so we don't sort of question their influence as much as we should. But we should look at really who out of everybody. I mean, we should look at the whole industry, and they are lobbyists. They have private commercial interests.
The royal family is quite deliberately used by the British establishment as a traditional symbol of the hierarchical and elitist society as a whole.
The media collaborates in the cover-up. It collaborates in massaging the news in order to downplay anything which is critical of the royal family. And what it also does is it pumps up all of the kind of bread and circuses nonsense, the Hello magazine type celebrity culture which surrounds them. So there's a royal wedding or there's a royal baby or whatever, and they turn it into a jamboree, which is like something out of ancient Rome or something out of medieval England. A completely kind of feudal sort of obsession with these extraordinarily rich.
After all, if people in Britain can be got to accept one incredibly wealthy individual whose position as nominal head of state and church and chief of the armed forces is hereditary, then why should they not accept an entire ruling elite based on similarly undemocratic principles? The existence of the monarchy is based on the idea of perpetual inequality as a natural order. It bolsters the old adages that seek to ensure that the status quo remains undisturbed. This is the world where the poor are always with us, where there will always be the rich man in his castle and the poor man at his gate.
If the purpose of the monarchy is as a tourist attraction, we should do two things. We should add a small levy onto the taxes and fees that tourists pay to come into the UK anyway. And that's how we could fund the British monarchy, rather than it being funded through hard-earned taxpayers' pounds and pence. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if what they're meant to be is a tourist attraction, then they should stay well out of any public debates that constitutionally they shouldn't be involved in anyway. So Prince Andrew should not be rushing around the world like a buffoon, selling British weapons to highly inappropriate governments. Prince Charles should not be writing letters to people in decision-making positions to try and ensure that his vision of what the United Kingdom should look like architecturally is imposed on the country. Then they can be just a tourist attraction. Then I would have less of a problem with them. But as long as we are paying for their extremely luxurious lifestyle, I think we also have a right to determine what they do and don't do.
This is a world where the poor and disadvantaged are supposed to find solace in gazing on the finery of the royals, where everything from the crown jewels to Kate Middleton's wedding dress is supposed to bring glamour to lives where even small luxuries cost a week's wages. The majority of the press encourage us to forget our own troubles and worry about the happiness or otherwise of the characters in the royal soap opera. William and Kate's happy marriage, Diana and Charles's unhappy marriage, are talked about as if they matter more than the trials and joys of our own friends and relatives.
They have a very sophisticated PR machine. They are a brand that needs to be looked after, and they engage in any other practices that any other entity, brand engages in. So any bad stories they will seek to quash and keep out of the media, and they will pump it full of good stories.
The unacceptable racist ramblings of the Duke of Edinburgh are suppressed. The unfortunate nonsense let slip by Prince Andrew is excused. The less appealing members of the family, like Fergie, are hidden from view or expelled from the clan.
And it is worth remembering that this is not a family who've exactly covered themselves in glory by the way they've behaved. I mean, Prince Andrew's father, the Duke of Edinburgh, has on numerous occasions been overheard making quite racist comments, highly inappropriate comments. I mean, one of the younger members of the royal family, Prince Harry, found it amusing to dress up in a Nazi uniform for a fancy dress party.
Every charitable gesture or good work, on the other hand, is magnified. It is the work of PR experts, spin doctors, and the loyal royal correspondents. But it is a national myth, and only partly believed.
The royal family is of course packaged as a family of people who are doing all sorts of good works, who are raising money for charity and that kind of thing. And of course that's all part of the packaging. It's a necessary part of the